Warning: contains somewhat mature content, including language, brief violence, and mild sexual themes, and may not be suitable for people under age 14.
I smiled, continuing to paint. His voice was so beautiful, even more so than in my dream. It almost brought tears to my eyes. He softly played without singing, watching me.
"What are you thinking about?"
he asked. "Well," I said slowly, "I was thinking about the dream I had about you." Rain blinked.
"You had a dream about me?"
he asked. I nodded. "Remember the dream I told you about where I was stuck in a closet?" Rain nodded slowly. "Well, the second time I had the same dream, but you were on the other side. This is when you were pretending to go out with Sean. You sang a song through the door and told me I never knew how much I loved something until I've lost it."
"It's kind of true," said Rain. "And the second one?"
"The second one I had last night," I replied. "You sang part of the same song to me, then I broke out of the closet, and you told me you'd always protect me." Rain smiled again.
"Also true?"
he said.
"So what was the song?"
I thought. "I'm almost sure that it's called Crawling in the Dark, but I don't know. I also don't know the band name," I said. Rain thought, then began playing on his guitar another familiar tune. He started singing again.
"I will dedicate and sacrifice my everything for just a second's worth of how my story's ending. And I wish I could know if the directions that I take and all the choices that I make will end up all for nothing."
"That one?" he said after singing the first verse. I nodded. "Yeah, that's the exact one," I said, smiling. Rain laughed.
"Hoobastank,"
he said. I blinked. "That's the band?" I asked. Rain nodded.
"That song seems to say a lot about you,"
he said. I nodded. "It's strange," I said. I finished painting the seashells and put the paint away. "What do I do with this brush?" Rain pointed to a glass of water on his nightstand.
"Just set it in there. It'll clean itself,"
he said. I did so, then sat on his bed. He put his guitar aside and held me, laying down. He looked around at my shells and smiled.
"They're beautiful."
I blushed. "They are not. It looks like a 2-year-old painted them," I said. Rain laughed.
"No, they don't,"
he argued.
"They look like a professional painted them."
I sighed. "You're just saying that," I murmured.
"I'm not,"
said Rain, kissing my head gently. I realized we were both still shirtless, because he had put both hands on my stomach.
"I love you, Cole,"
he said. I blushed and my stomach fluttered. "I love you too," I said, smiling to myself. There was a knock at Rain's door.
"Come in,"
Rain said. Victoria opened the door, then cooed. "Aw, look at you two," she said, giggling. Rain smiled and sighed.
"Thank you, Mother. Now, what did you come in here for?"
he asked, sounding amused. "A few things," she replied. "I got stuff for the cats so we can feed them and everything. Also, I called up some schools. There's one not too far away from here that I can take you to tomorrow. You're already transferred into their database." Rain nodded.
"Thanks, Mom. Is that all?"
Rain asked. "Are you boys hungry?" Victoria said. Rain thought, then looked at me.
"Are we, Cole?"
he asked. I blinked. Sure, why not?" I said, uncertain. Victoria smiled. "I'll go order pizza," she said, then left, closing the door. "Wow," I said. "I have finally found out what it's like to have a mother who cares." Rain laughed.
"Yeah, she's awesome. Want to meet my dad?"
I frowned, then nodded. Rain helped me up and led me out of the room. He took me upstairs and into a dark room with little candles everywhere. There were flowers surrounding a picture of a man with shorter black hair and bright blue eyes. Rain's eyes.
"Dad,"
said Rain to the picture.
"This is Cole. Cole, this is my dad, Walter."
I stared at the picture and smiled weakly. "Nice to meet you, sir," I said softly. I felt so sad for Rain, having to lose his caring father at such a young age. Rain put his arm around me.
"Knowing him, he'd say something like, 'Don't call me sir, it makes me sound old,'"
he said. I laughed slightly, but I felt like I was going to cry. I suddenly buried my face in Rain's chest, trembling. Rain blinked and stroked my hair.
"Shh, it's all right,"
he said softly.
I know it must be hard to deal with what you're feeling right now, and I know you are feeling the pain I felt when I lost him, but it's all okay now. I know he wouldn't want me to be sad forever, and I don't think he'd want you to be sad either."
I nodded and looked up at him. "It's just not fair," I told him. "How could God take away a great man from a little boy, and not take away a bad man like my father? Why did it happen to you?" Rain sighed and shrugged.
"Bad things happen to good people," he said. "Kind of another reason why I don't believe in God."
I looked at the picture of Walter, studying his pleasant face. He looked like he had been very fun to be around. "What was he like?" I asked. Rain smiled and sat on a pillow, patting the spot next to him. I sat there.
"He was awesome," said Rain. "He was in a band in high school, the lead singer and guitarist. But then he met Mom and decided he didn't have time to be in the band, so he left. He went to college and became a music teacher, and all his students loved him because he had such a great sense of humor. Then Mom got pregnant with me. When I was little, Dad told me that if he hadn't quit the band, he would have had no money to keep me alive. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. He taught me some guitar and sang with me, told me jokes, painted pictures for me and my mom, but he was always smoking. Mom told him to stop, and he tried, but he couldn't. He died, and Mom and I were a mess, crying together every day, ever since he died. I strive to become great with the guitar, and I even paint a little, but I will never ever smoke because I saw what it did to him."
I listened, becoming very depressed. "I'm so sorry it had to be that way," I said. "I'm glad he was a good man, though. I'm glad that he got to marry a beautiful woman and have a beautiful son." Rain smiled and hugged me tightly.
"Oh man, he would have loved you like a second son, Cole," he said.
Victoria knocked on the door gently. "Pizza's here, boys," she said. Then we heard her walk away. Rain stood up, then helped me to my feet.
"See you later, Dad,"
said Rain, and we left the small room, going down to the kitchen. Rain and I ate pizza together while Victoria paid her bills in the living room. When we finished, we went back up to his room. It was already getting dark, and I was very tired. It had been a long day. Apparently I yawned because Rain started laughing.
"Tired?"
he asked. I blushed and nodded. Rain stretched and sighed.
"I am too, come to think of it. Are you gonna sleep in my bed, or would you be more comfortable sleeping alone?"
I watched him, not sure how to answer. "Well," I said after a minute, "I guess I could sleep with you." Rain smiled.
"All right, but I sleep in my underwear,"
he said. I blushed more, and he laughed again. He took off his pants and put them in a hamper. I couldn't help looking at his boxers, which were black with little strawberries on them. Rain watched me.
"You can too if you want."
I watched him, too excited to speak, so I just shrugged. He approached me and unzipped my pants for me, which made me stop breathing for a moment. It drove me crazy. He took my pants off for me and put them in his hamper as well, then tilted his head, looking at my boxers. They were blue, just like everything else on me. He smiled, and I knew he was thinking that it was cute that even my underwear was blue. Or was it that he thought my excitement was cute? Rain went over and turned off his light, making the room pitch black because his curtains were black as well as everything else. I felt his hands on my hips, which made my heart jump, and he led me through the darkness to his bed, helping me lay down. His blankets were very soft. I felt him lay down next to me.
"Are you scared?"
he asked.
"This is your first time sleeping with somebody, isn't it?"
I nodded. "I'm all right," I replied. "Just really nervous." Rain chuckled and pulled me to him, pressing his hips against mine.
"Really nervous, but really excited,"
he whispered, which made my skin tingle. "Shut up," I muttered, and he laughed, nuzzling his nose into my hair. His hand moved dangerously below my hips, and my heart pounded even faster. "Rain," I said softly, closing my eyes tightly. He brought his hand back up to rest at the small of my back.
"Sorry,"
he said.
"Good night."
He didn't say anything more. I felt sort of guilty, but I fell asleep very soon afterward. I woke up, still in Rain's arms, and still pressed against his body. It was like he didn't let me go all through the night. Then I looked up and saw the reason why I woke up. Victoria had shaken me awake, and was now trying to wake up Rain. "He's such a heavy sleeper," she told me, seeing I was awake. She shook him harder and he groaned, opening his eyes and blinking at his mother tiredly. She smiled. "Get up and get ready for school," she demanded, and left the room. Rain let go of me and sat up, rubbing his eyes. He looked at me and smiled.
"Good morning,"
he said hoarsely. I yawned and sat up, leaning against Rain gently. "I don't want to go to school," I said, voice cracking from exhaustion. Rain laughed.
"I don't either, but we gotta,"
he said. He got up and off the bed, but then looked at me. I was slowly falling asleep sitting up. I suddenly felt him grope me, which made me excited again, and I gasped, opening my eyes and staring at him. Rain laughed.
"Good morning,"
he said again, and then went to his dresser to get some clothes. I groaned and looked down at myself, blushing. I looked back over to him and frowned. "Rain, I don't have any clothes," I reminded him. He paused, holding some pants.
He said. "Well, wear the same pants, and I'll give you a shirt."
I nodded, getting up. I frowned, hoping that the result of what Rain did to me would go away soon. I took my pants out of the hamper and put them on. Rain had already put his pants on and was now looking for a shirt. He tossed me a black t-shirt, which I put on.
"Sorry it's not blue," he said, "but it's the only one of my shirts that still has sleeves."
"Oh, it's all right," I replied, smiling at him. "Better than nothing." Rain put on his black muscle shirt with the pink cat face on it. Then we both put on our shoes and grabbed our backpacks, going into the living room to meet his mom. Victoria handed each of us a piece of toast, then grabbed her car keys and let us out the door and into the car again. She drove us to a small school on the outskirts of town. The school was called Ridgeway High School, and it looked like not many kids went there. She dropped us off in the front. "Have a good day, you two," she said, then drove away. Rain sighed, looking around.
"Well, let's go to the office to get our schedules,"
he said, and we both walked around until we found the office. Unfortunately, we didn't have our first two classes together. We only had periods 3, 5, and 6 together. So when the bell rang, I went to my class and he went to his. My first class was English. Sitting through the class for 45 minutes made me see that they were way ahead of my class at St. Vermont. I ended up not getting anything in that class already, and knew this was going to be very tough for me. My second class was digital design, which I didn't even have at my old school. They had switched it for study skills. I was behind in that class as well, since it was more than halfway through the school year. I met Rain in the hall when we were going to third period, which was math. He looked at me and grimaced.
"I don't know anything in my classes so far,"
he said.
"Are you having trouble too?"
I nodded, going into the classroom with him. We looked over to the teacher and saw 2 policemen talking to him. Rain froze and grabbed my arm, stopping me from going any further. "Rain, what?" I said, but then noticed the teacher check his roster and pointed at the 2 of us. All the students stared at us, as did the police. They began walking over to us, and I knew what must have happened. "Shit," said Rain, and he held my hand, sprinting out of the room, taking me with him. The police saw we had started running and yelled for us to stop, beginning to chase after us. "Rain, what are we going to do?" I shouted, panting from running so much. Rain didn't answer right away, but then he laughed, seeing a fence. On the other side of the fence was a very thick forest.
"We're going to lose them, that's what,"
he said. We reached the fence and he helped me over first, then climbed over himself. I was wheezing and panting because I wasn't used to running. Rain picked me up and ran into the forest, which was very dark. I heard the policeman make it over the fence, but the footsteps stopped. "Where'd they go?" asked one of them.
"I'm not sure, keep looking,"
said the other. Rain kept running until we came to an abandoned bear den, surrounded by bushes. He set me down.
"Go in there. I'm going to unearth these bushes to hide the den with,"
he whispered. I did as he said, crawling into the den. He began ripping bushes out of the ground. Then he came into the den and blocked the entrance with the bushes. He looked at me and put his finger to his lips, letting me know not to make a sound. We sat there listening, and we heard the policeman walk near the den.
"Let's face it,"
said one of them.
"We'll never find them in here. We have to go tell Miss Learson they got away."
"She's gonna be pissed," said the other policeman. We heard their footsteps fade away, but Rain gestured for me to keep quiet still. He slowly moved the bush and looked around, and then he sighed.
"They're gone,"
he said, and we moved out of the den.
"Your mom probably was looking for us at the school, then found out where we got transferred to."
I sighed and hung my head.